Last week, those of you who were here, know that we talked about the mystery of the face and what the face means, especially when it applies to God. Of course, it has none, or does he, she? Well, that's what we talked about. So I'd like to develop a little bit of the features of the face tonight, starting with, as you'll see, this 10th koan from the Blue Cliff record. It's called Bokushu's Empty-Headed Fool. It's, of course, what we should all aspire to be. Fool, in the best sense, the fool for Christ, fool for Buddha, and empty-headed. Absolutely. Get all that stuff out of there, flush it out. So in other words, insults, what seem to be insults in Zen are usually compliments. This is the case here. So, Bokushu asked a monk, "Where are you from?" And the monk gave a katsu shout. The commentary says that katsu is an onomatopoetic word. Apparently they shouted that, "Katsu!" And Bokushu, "This old monk is shouted down by you," Bokushu said. The monk shouted again. And Bokushu said, "What about the third and the fourth shout?" The monk stayed silent. And that's when he called him an empty-headed fool. But both were of interest. Come back to that in a second, because in the verse commentary it says, 2 shouts, 3 shouts, the knowing one knows well. So there was real knowing expressed in this shout. It's pretty well known that many times, and I've seen it myself, a student will come in to Daisan and shout and think that means it's going to be praised for his insight. It's like Gute's finger, the finger that where the boy had a finger cut off recently, that I spoke about recently. It's not the doing of it, it's what's behind it, what inspires it. So the mere action doesn't necessarily betray enlightenment. So can't fool the fools. But in this case, says the knowing one knows well. It says, but both are blind. So there's the feature of the eyes. In other words, both Bokushu and the monk were blind. But remember, what seems to be an insult perhaps to us is actually a compliment. And interestingly, the commentary says, Zen recognizes 5 kinds of blindness. This is interesting. So I don't know who formulated this. It's not exactly from the masters, but it's maybe a fairly interesting summation of the way that is used, not just in Zen, but in other traditions as well. There's the blindness of the regular, ignorant, delusional run of people. Most people are the blind leading the blind, as Jesus would say. Then there's an evil blindness of, it translates heretic here, but I guess that means someone who's not only just ordinary blindness, but actually, believes harmful things, which can happen as well. But then this is the other thing, but says both are blind. There's the true blindness of the enlightened. As it says here, the worldly eye of such a person has become blind. So that is true. You find that in the koans and the masters. You have to become blind in order to see. You get that a little bit in the Gospel of John too. The blind man is the one who was born blind is the one who finally sees, whereas those who see don't. Pharisees don't see, even though they see. It's that kind of interplay. But this is important in Mahayana. It's important in Zen, and important for us. The fourth kind of blindness is of those who stick to their realization, their enlightenment. Number 3. And make much of being enlightened. They think that's the final goal. That's one of the main points of insistence of the Mahayana tradition. It's not a matter of reaching nirvana, reaching enlightenment, whatever you want to call it, experiencing the absolute. You have to come down from the mountain to, not just to give witness to your enlightenment, but to increase it, to nuance it, to mature it. That's the Oxfordian picture of the person coming back, smiling and bare-chested into the marketplace from having discovered his true self. And then the fifth, transcendent, genuine blindness, the condition of the Buddhas. Only when one outgrows that other type of blindness, that's that final stage. When they don't stick to their realization anymore, they come back down to ordinary mind. And it's interesting, in the introduction to the original introduction to the koan, it points out, therefore, when one's activity is upward, towards that enlightenment, which is third level. Even Shakyamuni, Maitreya, the Buddha of the future, Manjusri, the Bodhisattva of wisdom, Samantabhadra, the Bodhisattva of perfect realization. 1,000 holy ones and the religious teachers of the whole world become silent. So that level is the true level of attainment. That blindness which is enlightenment. Even the Bodhisattvas are silent now. Whereas if one's activity is downwards, one returns. Doesn't mean the original number 1 blindness, but number 5. You go down back to the marketplace. Even maggots, gnats, and all creatures become brilliantly illuminating and as independent as a 10,000 fathom cliff. So that's a good test, and there are koans that deal with that more directly. One atom, Zen, the slightest grain of sand, a gnat, a maggot, whatever it might be, is luminous, is Buddha. When you return, enlightened to the market. So it's not about remaining up there with Samantabhadra. It's about coming down to the maggots and realizing you're one with them as well. It's a privilege to meet the mosquito in your bedroom. So, how enlightened are you? Well, I'm not. But let's go back to the shout. So I talked about the eyes there. But this shout, remember, it just said he was silent. The masters were silent. So silence really is that level of, the proverb, whoever speaks doesn't know, and whoever knows doesn't speak. That level, which you've read many times, where you reach wisdom in silence and you stay in silence. No word is added. But the same applies in Zen, and in our, hopefully in our own lives. That it's not words themselves, it's not the movement, it's not. It's what's behind it. So if it's just babble, then sure, then be quiet. But if, as the Buddha, and other masters have done, the words come from the silence. And maybe they're worth listening to. So again, it's really beyond speech and silence. This is beyond, seeing or not seeing. It's beyond speech and silence, the ultimate attainment, where you can do one or the other. My favorite koan about that is one of the early ones. In fact, it's the one right after the one we saw last week about the barbarian with beard or no beard. The face, we'll talk about that. Whose face is it? Every face is your face. It's that kind of thing. Everyone's in Christ. Anyway, this number 5 is of a man up in a tree. I like this imagery here. It's like a man up in a tree hanging from a branch by his teeth. And I see that in a trapeze artist or something, hanging from the teeth, But here, a person is hanging from a tree by his teeth, I don't know, a branch or something. His hands grasp no bough, his feet rest on no limb. And someone appears under the tree and asks him, what's the meaning of Bodhidharmas coming from the West? What's the truth of reality, the Buddha, etc.? And so the dilemma is, if he does not answer, he fails to respond to the question. If he keeps silent, he misses. But if he does answer, he'll be dead. So, what would you do in such a situation as the koan? Well, in order to answer, you have to die anyway. It's the same basic idea. Where it seems to be an irresolvable dilemma, is to get you to realize, well, both and neither, speech or silence, it's not one or the other. And each one is a life and death matter. So you get a sense of the existential intensity and importance of being able to adequately respond to the situation. It's not one or the other. So I'd like to conclude with a series of koans that in a row, which kind of illustrate this point pretty well. So just as there are different levels of types of silence, there are different levels of blindness, so are there of silence, or words. They have different values according to the wisdom or not which is behind them. So there are a couple of examples of this, 1, 2, 3 in a row koans in this collection of Luke and Frederick. Here's one of them. Very, very quick, very simple koan. And it's actually Hayakujo, the great master, famous koan, is number 2 in the Monkan. And he has 3 of his disciples, Isan, Goho, and Unga. They're all standing together. And each one of those disciples takes one of the koans and gives an answer to the same question. 1, 2, 3. It's actually 70, 71, and 72. So Hayakujo said, with your mouth and lips closed, how would you say? How would you say it? It being it! And of course they have the dilemma again. Mouth and lips closed, okay. Can it be said? So Isan says, I would ask you to say it. That's very clever. Turns the table right back around on Hayakujo. Is he going to use words or not? Is he going to keep it? What's he going to do? But it recognizes that the dilemma is a real question. They seem to approve of that reply. In other words, what would a teacher do? A teacher can do either one. And even if you speak, in a sense your mouth and lips are closed in the words. Anyway. Goho, the other one, number 2, says, you should shut up, to his teacher, which is also kind of a proof, because that's saying, well, to what would it compare on the level of 1 to 5 blindness? We would compare to number 3, where you have silence instead of, where you have blindness instead of sight, but it's the blindness of the enlightened. So here it's the silence of the enlightened. Shut up. But notice, it's number 3, not number 5. Because it seems to be saying, the only way you can adequately reply is to be quiet, to be silent. Whereas the whole point is, it doesn't matter whether you're one or the other, if it's coming from an authentic place. So in fact, the verse, or rather Hayakujo's reply at the end of the koan says, in reply to that, shut up. He's not offended, of course, he's a master. Masters don't get offended. In the distant land where no one stirs, I shall shade my eyes with my hand and watch for you. So he's affirming that that's the number 3. Why? In the distant land where no one stirs, way up there where no one moves, no one sees, no one speaks. It's very lofty, very beautiful, but it's just number 3. It's not number 3. So it's complementary. You It's compared to a general shooting an eagle in the distant sky, but that's the whole point. It's way up there. Very lofty, indeed, but when's it going to come down to the maggots? And then number 72. Ungan says, Master, do you have them or not? In other words, do you have mouth and lips or not? Which kind of misses the point. It's a little bit like the first response, like I ask you to speak. But... So in fact, it says that the master is snapping his fingers in vain, and the golden-haired lion is not ready to pounce, as if that's not really their Latin reply. Not even number 3, much less number 5. But I think the whole point here is that it's like dying and rising, really, in Christian sense. You have to become blind in order to see. Which is what Jesus says to the Pharisees at the very end of chapter 9. If you were blind, you would have no sin. Because that's the starting point. To become blind first and then see. And then you have to be silent in order to speak. So if you don't become blind, if you don't die, if you don't become silent, you won't get it. But if you're just blind, and silent, like the monkey, speak, and if you're just blind and silent, dead, you're dead. I mean, that's off on some mountaintop. And that is the impression, as I learned from my time up in Worcester. Yes? From the stories I was hearing. It's the impression you can sometimes get from some masters, meditators, who kind of like give the impression of kind of being like zombies almost. They're off on the distant land of the distant skies. Very ethereal. Which is enlightenment, but is that the final word? In a sense, the final word is not a word. It's not silence. It is a word. Just like the maggots can be, as the commentary says, can be good morning. So if someone says to you on the street, good morning, well, I mean, it's pleasant and it's nice, but it may just be the number 1, you're just going through the motions, customary niceties of daily life, which is okay. Or, good morning, can be the height of enlightenment. Can you tell? Does the person know? Maybe it's better they don't. Knowing or not knowing, well, let's not get into that. So, it is what it is.